A pristine white napkin embroidered with a golden star is crumpled in a trembling hand. You hear the sharp, arrogant voice of a woman. "He's telling you it's over, darling. Can't you take a hint you're a nobody?" The camera focuses on a plainly dressed woman, her face pale, sitting across from a handsome man and his stunning, cruel companion. The entire upscale restaurant is silent watching. The man, her husband, just sips his wine. But before the humiliated wife can even speak, the owner of the restaurant appears bowing deeply, not to the husband, not to the mistress, but to the nobody wife, calling her partner. The restaurant was called L'Étoile d'Or, and it was a temple of quiet, suffocating wealth. Crystal glasses chimed with the sound of old money. Waiters draped in starched white moved like ghosts, and in the very center of this opulent stage sat Alice Warren, feeling like an understudy accidentally thrust into the lead role. She was wearing a simple navy blue linen dress. It was 10 years old. It was the dress she'd worn on her first real date with Mark, back when he was an ambitious associate with more charm than cash, and she was a junior analyst who loved his laugh. Now the dress felt thin, its simplicity a stark contrast to the diamond-draped women at the surrounding tables. Tonight was their 15th wedding anniversary. Mark had texted her that afternoon. "L'Étoile d'Or, 8 p.m. Don't be late." It was the first time in 3 years he'd acknowledged their anniversary at all. Alice's heart, a small, hopeful bird, had dared to take flight. Maybe this was it. Maybe the coldness, the late nights, at the office, the scent of unfamiliar, expensive perfume on his suits. Maybe it was all just a phase. Maybe he'd finally seen the value in their shared history, in the quiet, steady home she had built for him. She had spent her life becoming the perfect support system. When Mark's company, Thorn Industries, started to take off, she'd quit her own promising career in finance at his request. "I need you, Alice," he'd said. "I need a stable foundation. You're my rock." So she became a rock, immovable, quiet, and slowly over the years worn smooth by his growing indifference. He was the CEO, the rainmaker, the one who attended galas and flew to Zurich. She was the one who managed the house, paid the surprisingly complex household bills, and volunteered at the city library. A nobody, as one of Mark's new flashy friends had once whispered at a disastrous Christmas party, just loud enough for Alice to hear. A waiter approached his smile, painfully polite. "More water, madame." "Yes, thank you," Alice said, her voice barely a whisper. He filled her glass, his eyes flicking for a brief second to her bare wrists, then to the heavy gold-laden arm of the woman at the next table, a certain Mrs. Davenport, a titan of city real estate. Alice shrank a little further into her chair. She checked her watch. 15 p.m. Mark was late. He was always late. She traced the small embroidered star on the linen napkin. L'Étoile d'Or. She'd always found the name a bit pretentious, but she knew from the detailed financial reports she reviewed every quarter that this particular establishment was one of the most profitable in the Etheria Hospitality Group's portfolio. It was a detail she kept to herself, just like she kept everything else. Her phone buzzed. It was Mark, running late, just arrived. A small, genuine smile touched Alice's lips. He was here. She smoothed her dress, ignoring the condescending glance from Mrs. Davenport. She would not let anyone ruin this night. This was their night. The grand oak doors of the restaurant opened, and Mark Warren walked in his tailored suit, impeccable, his handsome face set in the confident, dismissive mask he wore for the world. But he was not alone. On his arm, clinging to him, with a familiarity that struck Alice cold, was a woman. She was breathtaking, tall with rivers of honey-blonde hair, wearing a red dress that seemed poured onto her body. Her laughter was loud and sharp, echoing in the refined quiet. Alice knew her. She'd seen her in the society pages. Seraphina Hayes, an influencer who was famous for, as far as Alice could tell, being seen with powerful men. They didn't walk toward the greeting stand. They walked directly, inexorably, toward Alice's table. The hopeful bird in Alice's chest didn't just die, it was vaporized. The blood drained from her face, leaving a cold, prickling numbness. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a business associate he was politely seating before joining his wife. This was a statement. Mark stopped at the table, not even bothering to look Alice in the eye. He was focused on Seraphina, pulling out a chair for her. "Mark." Alice's voice was a dry crackle. He finally looked at her. His eyes, the ones she had fallen in love with, were as flat and cold as slate. "Alice, you're here. It's our anniversary, Mark." She said the words, tasting like ash. Seraphina let out a tinkling, cruel laugh. "Oh, is that today? How sweet. Mark, you old sentimentalist." She draped herself into the chair, her crimson-taloned hand landing possessively on Mark's arm. Mark cleared his throat, adjusting his cufflinks. He was a man performing a necessary but boring piece of business. "Alice, I'm glad you're here, actually. It saves me a phone call. Seraphina and we're together." The restaurant, which had been humming with quiet conversation, began to fall silent. The tables nearby were pretending not to listen, which meant they were hanging on every word. Mrs. Davenport had frozen her champagne flute halfway to her lips. "Together." Alice repeated the word nonsensical. "Don't make this difficult." Mark snapped his voice low. "It's been over for years, you know that. We're just roommates. I'm filing for divorce." "You're filing?" Alice's mind was spinning. The prenup, the clauses. She had spent years meticulously structuring her life, her hidden life, around that document. A document that was ironclad, provided she wasn't the one to file. He had just made a terrible, terrible mistake. But the shock was too great for that realization to offer any comfort. "Of course he's filing." Seraphina cut in her voice like broken glass. She leaned across the table, her expensive perfume washing over Alice in a sickening wave. She looked Alice up and down from her 10-year-old dress to her sensible low-heeled shoes. The disdain in her eyes was absolute. "Look at you," Seraphina said, her voice carrying across the silent room. "Just sitting here waiting for him. Did you really think he was going to celebrate with this?" She gestured to Alice. Alice was frozen, her hands gripping the napkin. She could feel dozens of eyes on her. "He's telling you it's over, darling," Seraphina continued, emboldened by Alice's silence. "Can't you take a hint? He wants a woman, not a housekeeper. You're a nobody." Nobody. The word hung in the air, vibrating with cruelty. Mark did nothing. He didn't defend her. He didn't even flinch. He just signaled for a waiter. "We'll need another bottle of the Veuve Clicquot." Alice felt the tears coming hot and stinging. She had been humiliated, discarded, and dismissed in the most public way possible. She was a rock, all right, one he had just kicked out of his path without a second glance. She fumbled for her purse, her only thought to get out, to run, to hide. "You're not a nobody, Mrs. Warren." The voice was new. It was deep calm and carried an authority that instantly silenced even Seraphina's smug breathing. Alice looked up, her vision blurred. Standing beside their table was a man in a flawless black suit. He was not a waiter. He was older, with silvering hair at his temples and the sharp, intelligent eyes of a hawk. His name was Mr. Giraud. Alice knew him, but not from here. Mark, annoyed by the interruption, looked up. "Excuse me, we're in the middle of something. Go get the manager." Mr. Giraud's lips twitched in a smile that held no humor. "There is no need. I am he. Serafina scoffed. Well, manager, we're having a private conversation. Run along and get our champagne. Mr. Giraud did not move. He did not even look at Serafina. His entire focus was on Alice, and his expression was one of profound respect, and something else, a cold, precise anger. Mrs. Warren, he said, bowing his head slightly, I am so sorry for this disturbance. I was not aware you were dining in the main hall tonight. Your private room is of course ready. Mark stared his fork halfway to his plate. Private room? What are you talking about? She's with me. Serafina let out another braying laugh. Oh, this is priceless. Is this some restaurant policy? Pity the dumped wife. Don't bother Giraud. She was just leaving. Mr. Giraud finally turned his gaze to Serafina Hayes. The temperature around the table dropped 10 degrees. His eyes were not angry. They were analytical, like a biologist studying a particularly uninteresting insect. Miss Hayes, he said, his voice quiet, but slicing through the room. You are a guest in this establishment. This woman, he gestured to Alice, is not. Mark, his arrogance pricked, threw his napkin down. Now look here. I don't know what's going on, but I'm Mark Thorne of Thorne Industries. This is my companion, Miss Hayes. We are high-value clients. This, he waved a dismissive hand at Alice, is my soon-to-be ex-wife. She is a housewife, a nobody. She has no account here. Oh, Mr. Thorne. Mr. Giraud said, a note of genuine pity in his voice. That is where you are tragically mistaken. He turned back to Alice, who was slowly, very slowly emerging from her fog of shock. The numbness was being replaced by a familiar, cold clarity. The one she used in boardrooms. The one Mark had never ever seen. Madame. Mr. Giraud said, his voice reverting to one of pure professional deference. You are paying for this man's champagne. Shall I have it removed? The entire restaurant was now in stunned silence. Mrs. Davenport, the real estate titan, was watching Mr. Giraud with a look of sudden, dawning recognition. She knew exactly who he was, and it was clear he was not just a manager. What did you call her? Mark stammered, his bravado finally cracking. I called her Madame, Giraud replied, as is her title. Her title, Serafina sneered, though a tiny worm of doubt was now in her voice. What is she, the queen of nobodies? Alice finally found her voice. It was not the trembling whisper from before. It was low, clear, and steady. No, Miss Hayes, Alice said, looking directly into the other woman's eyes. I'm not. She placed her crumpled napkin on the table and rose to her feet. As she did, Mr. Giraud instantly reflexively pulled her chair out for her. It was a gesture of deep, ingrained respect. Giraud, Mark demanded, his face turning a blotchy red. What is the meaning of this? Stop this, are you her friend? Is this a joke? I'll have your job for this. Mr. Giraud actually smiled. It was a terrifying sight. My job, Mr. Thorne, that would be complicated. You see, while I am the acting manager of L'Étoile d'Or, it is only a very small part of my duties as the chief operating officer of Etheria Hospitality Group. Serafina's heavily penciled-in eyebrows shot up. Etheria. Even she knew that name. They owned 5-star hotels across the globe. But my most important role, Mr. Giraud continued, placing a hand on the back of Alice's chair, is acting as the right hand and public-facing executive for our firm's founder, principal investor, and majority owner. He turned his body angled fully toward Alice. The real partner, Madame Alice Warren. The silence that followed was so profound that the distant clatter of a dish from the kitchen sounded like a gunshot. Serafina Hayes's face, which had been a mask of smug superiority, was now a frozen comical O of disbelief. Her painted red lips were parted, her eyes wide. Mark Thorne simply blinked. He looked at Mr. Giraud, then at Alice, then back to Mr. Giraud. A short, sharp laugh burst from his lips. That's absurd. Alice. My Alice owner of Etheria. She volunteers at a library. She balances the household checkbook. This is the most ridiculous, elaborate prank I have ever seen. It is no prank, Mr. Thorne, Giraud said. His calm was unassailable. Alice, tell him, Mark demanded, turning to her. Tell this waiter to stop. Tell him who you are. Alice looked at her husband, the man she had loved, the man she had supported, the man who had just publicly branded her a nobody while sitting next to his mistress on their anniversary. He's right, Mark, she said. Her voice was steady. I am the majority owner of Etheria Hospitality. Mark's face went from red to a pasty, sickly white. What, no? No, that's impossible. Your inheritance, that was just some small cap stock fund from your grandfather. It was nothing. A hobby. It was a $2 million seed fund, Alice corrected him, her voice as crisp as a new banknote, which I never touched. I let you believe it was a hobby while I took my own finance degree, my own analyst experience, and my grandfather's protégé, Mr. Giraud, here, and we founded Warren Giraud Holdings. Warren Giraud Holdings. Mark whispered the name unfamiliar. We are a private equity firm. Mr. Thorne Giraud supplied his tone, positively gleeful. We specialize in high-end hospitality and distressed commercial real estate. Etheria Group is simply our largest and most public-facing subsidiary. L'Étoile d'Or is just, I suppose you'd call it a pet project. A very, very profitable one. Mrs. Davenport, the real estate mogul at the next table, suddenly spoke, her voice ringing with newfound respect. Warren Giraud, your AW. Warren, the one who bought the St. Regis portfolio out from under my team last month. Good God. Alice inclined her head politely. Mrs. Davenport, a pleasure to finally put a face to the name. Your bid was very spirited. Mrs. Davenport looked from the unassuming woman in the linen dress to the apoplectic man and his gaudy mistress. She raised her glass. To A.W. Warren. Mark was reeling, his world tilting on its axis. But my company, Thorne Industries. I'm successful. I built that. I did that. Yes, you did, Alice said. You built a moderately successful logistics company. But you've been over-leveraged for 2 years, Mark. You've been making reckless expansion choices, trying to fund a lifestyle you couldn't afford. How would you know that? He stammered. Mr. Thorne. Giraud interjected. Who do you think holds the lease on your new corporate headquarters on Park Avenue, the one you signed last year, to project success? Mark's blood ran cold. And your company's primary line of credit, Alice continued, her voice devoid of all emotion. The one that keeps you liquid, the one that covers your payroll every month. Which bank holds that paper? Mark, Metropolitan Merchant Bank, he whispered. A small boutique bank, Giraud said. Acquired by Warren Giraud Holdings 18 months ago. We have been, Mr. Thorne, quite literally the only thing keeping your company from imploding for the last year and a half. My partner, he nodded at Alice, is a very patient woman. Seraphina's face had gone from disbelief to calculations. She was looking at Alice with a new, hungry light. She slid her hand off Mark's arm. So, Alice said, stepping away from the table, while you were busy with... Miss Hayes, I was busy running an empire you live in, an empire you work in, and an empire that until tonight was subsidizing your entire life. The revelation hung in the air, thick and heavy. Mark Thorne was not just a cheating husband, he was a fool, a kept man who didn't even know who was keeping him. But why? Mark's voice was barely a croak. Why all this deception? For years, the library, the old car. You drive a 12-year-old sedan. It's a very reliable sedan, Alice said coolly, and it doesn't attract attention, which is the point. She turned her gaze, sweeping the room, then landing back on him. I didn't do it to deceive you, Mark. I did it to protect myself. And for a very long time to protect you. Protect me, he scoffed, a flicker of his old arrogance returning. Yes, when you started Thorne Industries, you were brilliant. You were hungry. But when the first wave of success hit, you changed. You became this. She gestured to the scene. This man who needs the flashy car, the flashy woman, the trophy life. You became arrogant, and arrogant men make mistakes. He sputtered. You also insisted on a prenuptial agreement when we got married, Alice continued. You were the one making more money then from your father's firm. You wanted to protect your assets. And it does, Mark snarled. It protects my company. You get the house, and that's it. Alice almost laughed. Oh, Mark, you really should read the documents your lawyers draft. The prenup is very specific. It has an infidelity clause, a strong one. If you were proven to be unfaithful, you would forfeit any and all claim to my assets. But if I filed for divorce, for any other reason, my assets, or what you perceived as my assets, would be split 50-50. The pieces began to click into place in Mark's horrified mind. You knew, he whispered. You've known for how long? About Miss Hayes 6 months, Alice replied. About the woman before her in Zurich a year. I have photographs, bank transfers, hotel receipts. I have a very thorough legal team, Mark. I wasn't a nobody housewife. I was a CEO gathering data. For 2 years, Giraud added, my partner has been waiting. She wanted to give you a chance to come clean, to be the man she married. She was hoping. I was hoping, Alice confirmed, a flicker of genuine sadness in her eyes. I thought if I just held on, if I just kept supporting your company from the shadows, you would find your way back. Tonight, this was your last chance. Our anniversary, and you brought her. So what? Mark tried to bluster. So you get to keep your little hobby fund. I'll be fine. My company it's your company. Mark, Alice said, her voice dropping to ice, is a house of cards, and Warren Giraud Holdings is the table it's sitting on. You came in here tonight to call me a nobody and end our marriage. You just succeeded. But you didn't just end our marriage, you ended your career. Serafina Hayes, who had been quiet, suddenly saw her own future evaporating. The Park Avenue penthouse, the black card, the life she'd signed up for it, was all tied to him. And he was tied to Alice. Well, Serafina said, standing up and smoothing her red dress. She forced a dazzling smile at Alice. Alice, Madame, I have to say that is incredible. You are an inspiration to women everywhere. Mark always spoke of you, but he clearly didn't appreciate you. I can appreciate you. Alice looked at the woman with mild disgust. I'm sure you can, but I'm not interested in your appreciation, Miss Hayes. No, you don't understand, Serafina said, stepping closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial purr. A man like Mark, he's weak. You are strong. A strong woman needs, well, friends, powerful friends. It was the most shameless pivot in history, from mistress to sycophant in 30 seconds. Alice simply shook her head. You're right about one thing. He is weak, and so are you." Alice's voice, now that it was finally unleashed, was not loud. It was worse. It was devastatingly quiet, precise, and devoid of all heat. It was the voice of a surgeon announcing a terminal diagnosis. She did not look at the broken, sputtering man who was still technically her husband. She looked only at her chief operating officer. "Mr. Giraud," she said, her voice cutting through the stunned silence of l'Étoile d'Or. "Yes, madame," he replied, his own voice, a perfect mirror of calm professionalism. "Please contact our legal team. The senior partners. I want them awakened if necessary. Inform them that the infidelity clause of my prenuptial agreement is to be invoked immediately." Mark's head snapped up. "Infidelity. You can't prove—" "I can," Alice said, cutting him off without a glance. "And I will. The filing is to be on a judge's desk by 9 a.m. tomorrow. I want him out of the house by noon." "Out! Out of the house," Mark stammered. My house, Alice. That's my house." "It is a house held in a trust." Giraud provided his eyes, flicking to Mark for a brief, cold second. "A trust which Madame Warren is the sole trustee of. You are and have always been a guest, Mr. Thorne." The blood drained from Mark's face, but Alice was not finished. "Also," she continued, "instruct the board of Metropolitan Merchant Bank. I want an emergency remote vote called within the hour. They are to call in the entirety of Thorne Industries' outstanding line of credit, effective immediately." If Mark had been pale, he was now the color of wet cement. This was not a flesh wound. This was a kill shot. "No," he whispered, shaking his head as if to ward off a nightmare. "No, Alice. No, you can't. That's my life's work. My company. You do that and I'm ruined. It'll be bankrupt by Monday, Alice. All of it. The employees, the legacy. Please, you can't do this." "The pretext, madame," Giraud asked, ignoring Mark's desperate crumbling plea. "Breach of contract," Alice stated, as if reciting a grocery list. "Public morals clause, section 11B of his loan agreement. I'm sure his performance here tonight with Miss Hayes qualifies as bringing the company's primary debtor into disrepute. He is a moral and financial liability. The bank must protect its investment, liquidate his positions to cover the debt." "Alice, please." Mark was begging now, his hands outstretched. The entire room was watching the complete and total vivisection of a man who, 20 minutes ago, had been the king of his own small world. Alice finally turned her head and looked at him. Her eyes were not sad. They were not angry. They were bored, as if he were a particularly dull quarterly report. She then let her gaze drift to Serafina, who was frozen, her mind clearly spinning, trying to calculate this new, terrifying reality. "And Mr. Giraud," Alice said, her voice taking on a new icy edge of something almost like amusement. "One final piece of business. Miss Hayes mentioned something about Mark's sentimental nature. I too am feeling sentimental." She paused, letting the words hang. "I believe I'd like to own the apartment building she lives in." Serafina let out a small choked sound. "What?" Mr. Giraud was already checking his secure device. "Ah, the St. Regis residences. As you know, madame, we already own 40% of that building's holding company as of last quarter. Buy the other 60%, Alice ordered. I don't care what it costs. Pay a 30% premium if you have to. I want it closed, tonight. And then tomorrow morning, I want you to personally review Miss Hayes's lease. I am certain she is in violation of something. A noise complaint, an unregistered guest, a morality clause of her own. Find it and terminate her lease. I want her out by the end of the day." This blow landed. Serafina's mask of calculated greed shattered, revealing the raw, bottom-feeding panic beneath. Mark Thorne, the bankrupt fool, was worthless. But her home... This was the moment Mark's desperation snapped into its final pathetic form, bargaining. The anger hadn't worked. The denial hadn't worked. Now the plea. "Baby, listen to me," he said, his voice thick with a sudden grotesque imitation of love. He lunged, trying to grab her hand. Alice moved it away before he could touch her. "Alice, baby, it was a mistake, a stupid, terrible mistake. She means nothing to me. You know that it's you. It's always been you. I love you. I've always loved you. It was this final pathetic lie that made Serafina explode. You love her." Serafina's voice was a raw, ugly shriek. She pointed a crimson-taloned, trembling finger at the begging man. "You just told me in the car you hated her, that she was a boring, cold housekeeper. You pathetic coward. You loser." "Shut up, Serafina!" Mark roared, his panic making him wild. "You're ruining everything. Just shut up. I'm ruining it." Serafina let out a horrible, hysterical laugh. "I'm ruining it. You just sat there and let your wife bankrupt you. You're nothing. She's right. You're a nobody." "Enough!" Mark bellowed. Alice watched the two of them, the mistress and the husband, tearing each other apart like rabid animals. She let the silence stretch her disgust, a palpable, cold aura. Finally, she spoke, her soft voice silencing them both. "You don't love me, Mark," she said, her voice clear and final. "You don't even know me." She looked at his desperate, sweating face. "You loved the idea of me. You loved the idea of a quiet, supportive, invisible wife who would never question you, who would tidy up your life and manage your home while you lived a bigger, more important one. You told me once a long time ago that I was your rock." She took a single step closer, and he flinched. The whole restaurant seemed to lean in. "The thing you forgot about rocks, Mark," she whispered, "is that they are very, very heavy. And when you drop one, it crushes whatever is underneath." She straightened a general dismissing a disgraced soldier. She then turned her gaze to Serafina, who was frantically, uselessly trying to fix her ruined makeup with a napkin. "You called me a nobody, Miss Hayes," Alice said. "You were half right." She let the statement hang in the dead, silent room. "As of 9 a.m. tomorrow," Alice declared, "I am officially nobody's wife. I am not his—" She gestured with her chin to the broken man. "I am not yours to insult. I am my own. And you are just a temporary tenant, in my building. Enjoy your last night." She had said her piece. The execution was complete. She turned back to her COO. "Mr. Giraud," she said, her voice now crisp, all business. "Please have security escort Mr. Thorne and Miss Hayes out. They are finished, and they are disturbing the other diners." "My pleasure, madame," Giraud said. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. He simply snapped his fingers. From a table near the bar, two large men rose. They were not in restaurant uniforms. They were in dark, impeccably tailored suits with earpieces. They looked like Secret Service. They were Alice's personal detail, and they had been dining quietly, waiting for this exact signal. One man moved to Mark, the other to Serafina. "No, get your hands off me," Mark yelled, his bravado, returning for one last pathetic gasp. "You can't... Alice, you can't do this. This is our anniversary." The plea was so absurd, so utterly disconnected from reality, that a woman at a nearby table let out an audible gasp of disbelief. Serafina was just as loud. "Don't you touch me. Do you know who I am? I'll sue you. I'll sue this restaurant. I'll sue her." The security man didn't flinch. He simply took her by the upper arm in a grip that was clearly like a band of steel. She yelped. They were half lifted, half dragged through the silent gauntlet of diners. They were no longer a power couple. They were a spectacle. "It's 15 years." Mark's final cry was desperate, echoing off the high coffered ceilings. "You're throwing away 15 years." The grand oak doors were pulled open. They were physically pushed out onto the cold, dark cobblestone street. The doors clicked shut. The silence that returned was absolute. It was profound. Alice stood alone in the center of the room. She looked small in her simple dress, but she radiated an immense, terrifying power. Then a single sound. Clap. It was Mrs. Davenport, the real estate mogul. She was on her feet. Her face, framed by severe silver hair, was not smiling. It was a mask of pure, unadulterated respect. Clap, clap, clap. Then the banking mogul at the next table. He stood. He began to applaud. And then, table by table, the entire room. The city's elite, the old money, the new power, they all rose to their feet. It was not a cheer. It was a wave of sustained, rhythmic, stunned applause. It was an acknowledgement, a welcome. They were witnessing, in real time, the fall of a pretender and the public coronation of a queen. The echo of Mark's final desperate cry. Alice was sucked into the heavy velvet curtains of l'Étoile d'Or. The grand oak doors clicked shut with the finality of a vault. The silence that descended was absolute, a thick, heavy blanket of shock. For a full 3 seconds, the only sound was the distant, nervous tinkle of ice in a water glass. Alice stood alone, her small frame rigid. She had not moved. She was still in the center of the room, the focal point of 100 pairs of eyes. She felt them on her not as a humiliation, but as a judgment. And for the first time, she was not the one being judged. Then a single sound broke the quiet. Clap. It was a slow, deliberate, solitary sound. It came from the table beside hers. Mrs. Davenport, the real estate titan, a woman known for her iron will, and for crushing competitors before breakfast had risen to her feet. Her face, framed by severe silver hair, was not smiling. It was a look of profound, analytical respect. She was not applauding a victim. She was acknowledging a predator. Clap. Her hands met again. And again. As if a spell had been broken, the man at the table next to her, a banking mogul Alice knew by reputation, also stood. He joined the applause. Then another table, and another. It was not the raucous, messy applause of a theatre. It was a rhythmic, stunned, and deeply respectful wave of acclamation that washed over the entire room. They were not clapping for the nobody wife who had been saved. They were clapping for the silent power that had just been unveiled. They were clapping for A.W. Warren. Alice, who had weathered the storm of her husband's betrayal without shedding a tear, felt a sudden, hot prickling behind her eyes. This was not part of the plan. The plan was quiet, efficient, an extraction. This was a coronation. She straightened her spine, a move that felt as if she were shrugging off a 15-year-old 200-pound weight. She let the simple 10-year-old linen dress hang on her. It was no longer a symbol of her meekness. It was a testament to her discipline. She met Mrs. Davenport's eyes across the small space and gave a small, controlled, regal nod. Mrs. Davenport stopped clapping and raised her glass. "Mrs. Warren," she said, her voice clear. "Mrs. Davenport." Alice replied, her own voice steady. Mr. Giraud, who had been watching the scene with a look of immense, quiet pride, stepped forward. "Madame, your car is at the private entrance." "Thank you, Giraud," Alice said. "But first, please, send a bottle of the 05 Dom Perignon to every table in this room, with my apologies for the theatricality. It was unavoidable. Of course, madame, Giraud said. He turned to the nearest captain, who had been frozen in place, and gave the order with a simple flick of his wrist. The restaurant staff galvanized, sprang back to life. And, Alice added, turning to Mrs. Davenport's table, please send a bottle of the 59 Lafitte to Mrs. Davenport, with my compliments on her. Excellent timing. Mrs. Davenport's thin lips curved into a genuine smile. I look forward to it. And to future business, A.W. The use of the initials was a clear signal. The secret was out. The game had changed. Giraud placed a hand on Alice's elbow, not to support her, but to guide her. This way. He led her not to the main doors where her husband had been ejected, but through a discreet, unmarked panel in the wall, panelled in the same dark mahogany as the rest of the room. It opened into a plush, silent corridor, carpeted in deep burgundy. The chaos of the dining room vanished. As the door clicked shut behind them, Giraud's entire demeanour shifted. The respectful, deferential manager was gone. In his place was the sharp, efficient COO, her grandfather's protégé, her mentor, and her most trusted partner. "Alice," he said, his voice brisk. "Are you all right? I'm Operational Giraud," she replied, her voice cooling by the second, shedding the last of the wife and becoming the CEO. He did exactly as the psychological profile predicted. Arrogant, dismissive, and he used the key phrase. Nobody. We have at least 50 witnesses to his public declaration of infidelity. Security feeds from the restaurant are already uploaded to the legal server, Giraud confirmed as they walked. Audio is crystal clear. The infidelity clause is ironclad. They reached a private elevator which opened at their approach. Inside, Giraud pressed the button for the subterranean garage. "Well," Giraud said, allowing himself a small, grim smile. "That was overdue." "It was necessary," Alice said, her gaze hardening. "He had to be the one to light the match. The prenup was specific. If I filed, it was a 50-50 split of perceived assets. If he filed or was proven in breach, I retained 100% of Warren Giraud assets, and he forfeited everything. He just handed me his entire future on a silver platter." The elevator doors opened into a pristine, white-tiled private garage. Only one car was present. It was not a flashy Ferrari or a stately Rolls-Royce. It was a Bentley Mulsanne, custom-built the color of a thundercloud. It was a vehicle that did not scream for attention. It simply possessed it. A driver in a dark suit stood at the open rear door. Alice slid in. Giraud took the passenger seat, and the large sedan pulled away, its engine a deep, powerful hum. The car was not a refuge. It was a war room. Before they had even hit the street, Giraud was on his secure satellite phone. "Execute protocol ironclad. Yes, now. Inform the board of Metropolitan Merchant. I want the note on Thorn Industries called in full. Tonight. I don't care what time it is in London. Get the directors on the line. The morals clause was breached publicly. We have the proof. We are claiming full default. Liquidate his positions to cover the debt. Yes, all of them." Alice, meanwhile, was on her own device, not a phone, but a hardened, encrypted tablet. She was not crying. She was not shaking. She was working. Her fingers flew across the screen. "Giraud," she said, not looking up. "Contact household staff. The locks on the main house are to be changed within the hour. My personal items were moved to the sanctuary last week. His are not." "Already handled," Giraud said, covering the mouthpiece of his phone. "Our team is on site now. He will be denied entry." "Good," Alice said. "Authorize them to allow him 1 supervised hour tomorrow to collect his personal effects. After that, anything left is to be donated. I want him erased from that house by noon." "Understood." Giraud turned back to his call. Legal team file the divorce proceedings. Timestamp them for 9:01 a.m. I want the injunction to freeze all joint assets and all Thorn Industries assets on a judge's desk by 9:05. He is not to move a single dollar. Alice closed her eyes for a moment, not in pain, but in calculation. She remembered Mark 15 years ago, all charm and ambition, promising her the world. She had loved him. She truly had. But the man she loved had been eaten alive by the man he became, a shallow, arrogant creature who needed to diminish her to feel big. She remembered the day 2 years ago when Giraud had quietly placed a file on her desk. It was from a private investigator. Photos, a hotel in Zurich, a blonde woman, not Serafina, but a predecessor. That was the day the marriage had truly ended. That was the day Alice Warren, housewife, became a character she played a shell she inhabited, while A.W. Warren, the invisible titan, began to build her fortress. She had given him 2 years to find his way back. 2 years of rope. Tonight he had used it to hang himself. And Giraud, Alice said, her voice dropping to absolute zero. The mistress, Serafina Hayes. Giraud's smile was wolfish. He was already on a new call. Acquisitions, the St. Regis residences. Yes, the entire holding company. I am authorizing a premium of up to 25% over market. I want it closed. Tonight. Yes, wake up the board in Hong Kong. This is an A.W. Warren priority directive. I want the keys and the tenant files on my desk by 6 a.m. As soon as the sale is finalized, Alice instructed, find the morality and conduct clause in Miss Hayes's lease. I'm sure there's one. The late-night parties, the constant traffic. I'm sure she's in breach. Terminate it. Give her 24 hours. Have a security team escort her out. Consider her rehoused. Giraud confirmed. Meanwhile, on the cobblestone curb outside L'Etoile d'Or, the reality was crashing down like a physical weight. Loser, pathetic, weak loser. Serafina Hayes was screaming, her voice, a raw, ugly screech that was a far cry from her tinkling laugh. You just let her do that. You're nothing. You told me she was nothing. Shut up, Serafina, just. Shut up. Mark roared his hands, yanking at his tie. He was sweating his expensive suit, suddenly feeling like a cheap costume. He was humiliated. The doorman, a man he had tipped $100 bill just last week, was now staring at him with cold, dead eyes. She called you a housekeeper. Serafina shrieked tears of rage and terror, carving black streaks of mascara down her face. No worse, she called you her employee, and she was right. I said, shut up. Mark fumbled for his phone, his fingers slick. He had to call his lawyer. He had to call his bank. He had to fix this. He stabbed at the Uber app to get them away from the staring faces. His top-tier corporate Amex. Payment declined. He stared at the screen, his blood turning to ice. Declined. That was impossible. It had an unlimited credit line. He tried his personal platinum card. Payment declined. Mark, what's wrong? Get a car, Serafina demanded, her voice shrill with panic. I can't. The cards, they're not working. What do you mean they're not working? Before he could answer, his phone rang. The caller ID flashed Robert Yao, CFO. Relief washed over him. Robert, thank God. Listen, I've got a massive problem. My cards are locked. I need you to... Mark, what did you do? Robert's voice wasn't calm. He was screaming. What the hell did you do, Mark? What are you talking about? Metropolitan Merchant Bank? They just called our entire 8-figure credit line. The whole thing, Mark. They're citing a morals clause. A morals clause. What the hell happened at that restaurant? They're seizing our assets. We're frozen. The payroll for Monday. It's not going out. We're finished, Mark. We're bankrupt. Mark's knees buckled. He physically slumped against the brick wall of the restaurant, the phone slipping from his nerveless fingers. He heard it clatter on the pavement. Bankrupt. Finished. He looked at his hands, the hands of a rainmaker. A titan. He was a nobody. Serafina was watching his face, her own a mask of dawning horror. Her future, the penthouse, the black card. It was all evaporating. Her phone buzzed. An email from St. Regis, New Ownership LLC, subject notice of immediate lease termination. She read the first line. Pursuant to clauses 14B and 21A of your lease agreement, violation of building conduct and morality policies, you are hereby given 24 hours to vacate the premises. No, she whispered. No, this is a mistake. She frantically dialed the building manager, a man she had wrapped around her little finger. Miss Hayes. His voice was cold, professional, and utterly unfamiliar. I'm sorry. The building was sold approximately 45 minutes ago. The new ownership is extremely particular. Your lease has been terminated effective immediately. A security team will be at your door at 9 a.m. tomorrow to escort you and any personal belongings from the property. You can't, she screamed. I have rights. You have 24 hours, Miss Hayes. Good evening. The line went dead. She looked at the broken, ashen-faced man sliding down the wall. She looked at her own phone. She was locked out. He was broke. She let out a single guttural sob of pure, undiluted despair. She was toxic, tied to a broke, humiliated fool. No one would touch her now. Alice Warren hadn't just divorced her husband. She had scorched the earth around them both. The Bentley Mulsanne didn't go to the grand Georgian mansion Mark thought of as home. It slipped into the city, pulling into a private, guarded subterranean garage beneath a sleek, anonymous glass tower. An elevator opened directly into a sprawling penthouse. It was nothing like the house. The house was filled with heavy, dark wood hunting tapestries and Mark's ego. This place was light, airy, and powerful, minimalist with walls of glass offering a 360-degree view of the city. It was filled not with clutter, but with priceless modern art. This was Alice's real home, the sanctuary he never knew existed. She stepped out of the elevator, and the 10-year-old linen dress suddenly looked like a deliberate artistic choice in the hyper-modern setting. Giraud was already there, a tablet in hand, a fresh espresso waiting for her on a marble console. Status, she said, taking the cup. Legal has filed, Giraud reported. The judge on call has already signed the injunction. All assets are frozen. Thorn Industries is for all intents and purposes defunct as of 9:30 p.m. The house. Locks are changed. Our team leader reported Mr. Thorn arrived 20 minutes ago. He was denied entry. He made a scene. The local police were called. He was cautioned for trespassing and left on foot. Alice took a sip. Good. And Miss Hayes. The St. Regis acquisition is complete. It cost a 22% premium as projected. She has been served her notice. She also made a scene. Let her, Alice said, walking toward the vast wall of glass. She looked down at the city lights. Her city. She had been invisible for so long, moving billions from the shadows, all while playing the part of the quiet, supportive wife. The mask was finally off. Her tablet chimed, an alert. Giraud looked at his own. Ah, it seems Mrs. Davenport works as fast as we do. She's officially withdrawn her bid on the waterfront project. Alice turned a small, genuine smile touching her lips for the first time. She has, indeed. Her senior aide sent a secured message to my office. And I quote, "Mrs. Davenport has no interest in a bidding war with A.W. Warren and would like to propose a joint venture instead." She's already forwarded the prospectus. Giraud paused, walking to a hidden wine refrigerator. He retrieved a single bottle. She also sent this via courier to A.W. Warren at this address. A 1959 Lafitte. Alice laughed, a real clear musical laugh that echoed in the vast open room. It seems she speaks the language. She knew the address. A smart woman, Giraud agreed. She recognizes real power. Set a meeting with her for Monday, Giraud. Send her a case of the 05 Dom in return. A gesture of shared theatricality. Yes, Alice. She unzipped the blue linen dress, letting it fall to the floor in a simple, discarded pile. She stood in a simple silk slip, looking out at the empire she had built in silence. She was not a nobody. She was not nobody's wife. "Oh, and Giraud," she said, turning back. "Yes. Call the community library, the volunteer program I work with. I want you to book a 2-week all-expenses-paid vacation for the entire staff to our new resort in Palm Beach. They've been wonderful friends." Giraud smiled, a true smile of affection for the woman he had known since she was a girl. "Right away, Alice. Welcome home." Alice nodded, taking another sip of her espresso, watching the lights of the city glitter like jewels. Her jewels. The old life was over. The real one was just beginning. And so Alice Warren proved that the loudest voice in the room is rarely the most powerful. While her husband and his mistress were busy performing for an audience, Alice was a true partner, the owner of the entire theatre. She didn't need to shout about her worth, because her success, built in silence and with precision, spoke for itself. In the end, it wasn't just a restaurant that belonged to her. It was her own life, which she took back in one single devastating move. What did you think of Alice's incredible story? Have you ever seen someone so underestimated prove everyone wrong in such a spectacular way? Let us know your favorite part of this story in the comments below. Did you see the twist coming? If you loved this video, please show your support by hitting that like button, sharing it with someone who needs to hear this message, and most importantly, subscribe to our channel for more real-life drama and powerful stories every single week. We see you, and we appreciate you.